right, of
kind
course.
of familiar with. That was the beginning of my being on the road and meeting folks in that capacity. You know, the way you meet people on tour at a festival and you see,
Of course.
you know, that was the beginning of that. And so I got to meet, I say meet. I got to see Herbie Hancock, Wayne Shorter. You know, at the time there was a band with Herbie and Wayne and Dave Holland and Brian Blade.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And that was an interesting experience because that was the first time where I realized you could watch, you could see something impressive take place without enjoying it, because I didn't realize that I was watching something that was, for all intents and purposes, over my head.
Right.
But after the initial shock of seeing it take place, I was okay admitting that I didn't particularly care for it musically because I just didn't understand it.
Right.
And I remember standing there just kind of in awe of, man, it's Herbie Hancock and Wayne Shorter and, everybody. Right. And Roy was standing next to me just after the gig. And he's like, man, you hungry? You ever been to In-N-Out Burger? You know what I'm saying? So he was as interested as I was in what was happening. So that was the beginning of understanding that I could feel okay having a quite independent musical taste.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but that gig was the beginning of the spinning stage at Hollywood Bowl and the notion of having to memorize things that you don't know. Right. And having to perform and having to play in front of 10,000 people. But yeah, and I remember Keith Anderson and Roy having push-up competitions.
Oh.
Because one of the things that I learned along the way is that everyone, whether they had the discipline to stick to it or not, understood that physical fitness was part of musical excellence.
Right.
Everyone understood that. Not all of them had it together to really stay that course, but they all knew that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because that was one of the first things Herlin told me when I met him. You know what I mean? He was like, if you're going to be a drummer, you got to be strong.
You got to be strong. You got to be strong.
So, man, what in particular did you learn from being with Roy that you think would be valuable for other young musicians coming up?
I learned that discipline is not automatic. Mm-hmm. And that discipline is a pursuit. It's something that you develop and you have to maintain over time. It will not just be there.
You mean discipline on your instrument, or what?
However you receive it, discipline. You can have a musical gift or talent, but without discipline, it's usually wasted at some point.
You've witnessed him. His.
Well, what I'm saying is that I have witnessed, through my experience with him, the right and the wrong way to do just about everything.
Okay.
And, he was always very, very, very plain emotionally, which is to say he was not but completely open, on an emotional level. So that very often manifested in some occasionally unfortunate ways. Mm-hmm. But he was and I believe is fully committed to the music. It's just that the discipline that it takes to do this long term and be better for that commitment was, as with a lot of folks, occasionally lost on him. You cannot love music so much that you don't have to take care of anything else.
Oh, right.
That is not unique to Roy. I found that with most of the folks I worked with.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it is about me that, put me in those situations. But I was and am blessed to have learned from people like that all along the way, who were happy to teach me, but also could not help but show me the right and wrong way to do things.
I hear you.
Roy's music blossomed completely, in my estimation. So it's it was a blessing to have been around at that time to watch it happen. I mean, now I understand the expressions on the faces of people who got to play with Freddie Hubbard in a certain time. Now I understand why they would talk to me about Freddie in the way they did. Because now when people talk to me about Roy, I find myself making some of the same faces as people who talked about Freddie. Mm-hmm. I am not in a position to tell you how Roy will proceed or how he's doing. I know I'm playing with him coming up. I haven't seen him in years, but I know I'm happy to be a part of whatever's down the road, you know.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, the thing about Roy is that he was always committed to the music, and that's rare now. Yeah. People are even really good musicians are completely distracted by all these other things going on, and Roy was always about music.
Man, I want to ask you about the current, the most recent police shootings, and how they affect you, and how they affect the music and the people around you.
That's what they were put there to do. So now we're equipped such that we can film them doing that. But that's what they were sent there to do. So it's unfortunate that they were sent there for those purposes, but that's what they were sent to do. It's not good, but again, that is expressly what they were put there to do. Police exist to act as the military wing and or I should say the defense arm of a particular demographic, and they're there to do that. Mm-hmm. So it's you know, as they say, it's not them, but those who sent them. They're there doing what they trained and paid to do.
Yeah. And so how does that whole thing affect the music, at least the music that you're creating?
In the interest of homeostasis, while I do have a responsibility to register what's happening, I don't register quite the obligation to allow it to affect my production in a particularly obvious way. There are times when, yes, there is an obvious reaction to an obvious transgression, but I don't feel that I have to react in such a common way as I see so many artists doing. And very often I find artists can only react as their skill set will allow.
Right.
So that's why growing that skill set is important to me, because it allows you options artistically in terms of how you react. We cannot help but be directly affected by what's going on now, but the reality is it's always going on. Only difference is our ability to document it.
Right.
That's it. And our awareness of how unaffected so many people are by what's been documented. And again, that's not new. None of what is happening now is new. All that's new is phones with cameras and social media.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
It's the only thing that's new. What has come to light is that nothing has changed.
Exactly.
That perhaps is different. That is what is that is what is perhaps the new thing to contend with. That nothing is different. So as we look at, Eyes on the Prize, and as we look at all these different civil rights documentaries, and we watch movies like Rosewood, and things are exactly as they have been.
Yeah, that's the scariest part about America. America has remained stagnant in this very particular area. and it seems to be no end in that sight.
Again, America, if I'm understanding what you mean by that, it's doing exactly what it was designed to do. So the notion of progress is, I think, one of the new things that people have to figure out how to divest. It's not designed to progress. It's designed to stay in this holding pattern where one group of people are fine. This is part of why it's hard to get other folks to recognize a problem, because it's not a problem for everyone. Mm. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It's a problem now that the folks who experience the problem can show you, hey, we have a problem. But the problems are not new. And they happen with such regularity, it's easy to see now that they've been engineered to do just what they're doing. So I found peace in the reality that this is a moment in time, in our, I say our, I mean humanity is roughly 200,000 years. This is a blip. This is a less than 1,000-year hiccup in the natural order of things. Right. So, yes, it's unfortunate. It's painfully unfortunate, but it has happened, and it is happening on purpose. And that's why I don't speak about police brutality and militarization of police. All those terms presuppose that they weren't sent here to do this anyway, right? And they were. So that's why this notion of there's got to be justice, and how can you see this and there's no conviction? You can't convict people for doing their job. Damn, it's their job. I mean, you can't. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. And so yes, it is from my perspective inhumane, but inhumane treatment is necessarily part of the program.
Mm-hmm. Let me switch gears. Okay. Back to this music thing, and just thinking about. I think the most daunting thing about moving to New York, at least for me, and I'm sure for people who don't live here who want to move here to be an artist, is trying to figure out how to make a living. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And you've seemed to figure that out. And how did you do that? And what advice would you have for someone who wants to follow in your footsteps?
First of all, if you need for it to happen in a certain time span, you shouldn't do it. First of all, if you're the type of person that says, okay, I'm going to show up and I'm going to give New York 4 years, then don't come.
Got you.
Don't, because it just doesn't work like that. Even if it works exactly as you plan it in those 4 years, there's the day after those 4 years, which can go drastically different than the first 4 years.
Right.
And, New York has a way of making it so no amount of money will get you excited. New York has a way of making you live just beyond any amount of means. Right. If your next gig pays $3 million, in a year you're going to be trying to figure out what to do for money. Right. That's real. Okay? That's real. I don't care how nice the gig is. I don't care what... that's why people who do nice gigs still work. Yeah. Because New York has a way of conditioning you to expand your living to just beyond what your means are. But if you're so busy living the life, you'll never know that. Then you look up and you don't have anything, you can't do anything, and you're stuck. And so you got to leave or you got to die. Most people. I'm saying.
Okay.
I've seen it. I'm telling you what I've seen. I know a lot of people who just say, well, I can't continue my lifestyle here in New York, so I got to leave New York so I can continue my lifestyle. And I understand that. Mm-hmm. New York requires way more discipline than anyone wants to admit to be here for the long term. Right. Most people get caught up in what they think, based on they watched Mo Better Blues, or they think that's the life. And
I was a victim